TJ Watt for the Steelers said afterwards he'd never seen a team run the same running play so many times in a game. And they couldn't stop
over
it.
and over and over again.
This was such a reminder of exactly how broken the Pittsburgh Steelers are. And Caroline, I've talked a lot, and we've talked a lot about how right I was about the Colts. I mean, that was maybe my best take of the summer, right? But 2 months before that, I was sitting with Frank Schwab on Inside Coverage, and I said very loudly that I thought the Steelers would start as one of the hottest teams in the AFC, and that by the middle of the season, when the schedule got tough, that they would find their way to their first losing season under Tomlin, and that there's not really any wins above replacement for Aaron Rodgers over Mason Rudolph. We saw all of that last night. The Steelers are so wildly broken, and the crowd chanting fire Tomlin, and I've sat here so many times and said, great, if you want to fire Tomlin, he's going to go get a job tomorrow. That being said, I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and I say, why not move on? Why not move forward? Because this is as broken as I can ever remember Pittsburgh being. If you just take a look at the core foundational pieces of talent and then the coaching staff, the front office, the way the money's been spent, I think it's pretty hard not to see that the Steelers are in the worst shape in their entire division over the next 3 years. And yes, I'm including the Cleveland Browns because the Browns at least have superstars on the defensive side, and you understand what they're trying to do. They need a quarterback. Great. Well, the Steelers went all in this offseason. They spent a ton of money on veteran players this offseason, and they suck. They were never a good football team. They just beat up on bad football teams, and it's getting worse and worse throughout the course of this season. Now, I don't know that you're going to find a better coach than Mike Tomlin. I really don't. But something is broken in Pittsburgh, and I don't know how you fix it without a massive reset. And when you start talking about massive reset, where you're going to be drafting in the middle of this thing, you don't have a replacement at quarterback. You have old talent that's not living up to it. You have a defense that you spend a ton of money on that turns out is kind of pointless. Everything has gone wrong for the Steelers. There's no easy way to fix everything being wrong. That's a multi-year rebuild, and I think Pittsburgh is staring that right in the face.
It's time to have maybe some uncomfortable conversations about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because you say Mike Tomlin would get a job tomorrow. 100%, I 1,000% agree with that. Any team that's looking for a head coach would call Mike Tomlin up yesterday and say, get your butt in this building for an interview. I don't think that should be reason to give the Pittsburgh Steelers pause to not fire Mike Tomlin. Because think about like in a relationship, if you are not happy with your significant other, you don't not break up with them because they would get a new significant other tomorrow. You're saying, well, it's not working for us now, so I have to move on from you. And look, Mike Tomlin, I think, is one of the best coaches in the NFL. Mike Tomlin will be in Canton. I have so much respect for Mike Tomlin, but it's getting stale. And I feel like the Pittsburgh Steelers have been the exact same team for the last 10 years, 5+ years. They've been the same team. They are so stuck in the mucky middle that is it at this point, and maybe I'm wrong, but at this point, is it worth it for Steelers fans and for the Pittsburgh Steelers organization to roll the dice and find a worse coach just for the possibility that it could be better, just for a fresh perspective, just for something new and something different in that front office and on that coaching staff? Maybe not. Maybe Steelers fans are yelling at me and saying, no, don't move on from Tomlin. But I'm just saying it might be time to have the conversation that it's time for something new in Pittsburgh. Because while things are absolutely dreadful in Cleveland, and I feel for Browns fans, I think what might be even worse than being terrible is being good enough, but also not bad enough. 9-8, 8-9, which is exactly where the Steelers are at 500, 6-6. It's exactly where the Steelers have been for a very long time. What's their path to their next franchise quarterback? What's their path to patching up all of the holes that they have now that are filled by injured, old, and expensive players? What's their path to finding elite position players? What's their path to finding their franchise receiver, their franchise running back? I don't know. There are way too many issues on this Steelers team now, and not having a clear path to getting back into contention might be even worse than being terrible.
I get so torn on this as I was reminded, it is. I was reminded yesterday by social media that now that the Raiders have been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, they haven't had a playoff win since 2003. That would be the longest streak, second longest streak in the NFL behind the Dolphins. So I'm torn on this. I've watched as a fan. I've watched what suck looks like for a decade in a row, where you might have a moment where you pop through, but it's not because you're good. You pop through because you got lucky for a second, then you're right back to the sea of suck. I appreciate the fact that the Steelers have always found a way to win games, and I know Steelers fans don't appreciate that. I think the grass is always greener on the other side. Like the hardest part about moving on from somebody like Tomlin is, again, if you just go through the litany, the laundry list of different coaches that we've seen for, teams that stink. If you go through the laundry list of Browns coaches, you go through the laundry list of Raiders coaches, go through the laundry list of Jags coaches or Titans coaches, you find out how hard it is to find a great one. And Mike Tomlin is certainly a great one. That doesn't change. Oh, you're right, that the message has obviously died there. So at some point, the Steelers are going to have to find faith in their own ability to identify the next Mike Tomlin. That's easier said than done, but they're going to have to believe in that. I will say, Adam Schefter has made it very clear this morning throughout the course of the day on ESPN that he does not believe there is any scenario where the Pittsburgh Steelers will fire Mike Tomlin. That, frankly, the way that will eventually come to an end, when it comes to an end, is a mutual decision to part ways. So that becomes a question of, does Tomlin want to move on? And I do believe that Adam is not the type to come out and report that so matter of fact, unless he has a really good sense of information from behind the scenes. So I don't think that there's an easy answer to this if the Steelers want to let him go out on his own terms. But it might be best for the Steelers and best for Tomlin. Sometimes, remember, Andy Reid was supposedly not going to ever be capable of winning the big one for Philadelphia. They had to move on. It's worked out for the Eagles, and it's worked out for Kansas City. Maybe Tomlin moving out somewhere else and getting a quarterback, because you can't win if you don't have one. Maybe if he can find that quarterback, he can re-find that magic. And maybe by the Steelers separating from Tomlin, a new voice comes in, a new direction. They can find their new sense. But I will remind everybody, from the outset of this season, this was broken. Because if your answer was, we're going to go all in on Aaron Rodgers, you still didn't have a future at the position. So now you don't have this season flying for you. You don't have a future at the position. You don't have much that you can bank on.